Welcome back to WEFTech Live. I am the host, Travis Loop. One of the most important areas for the water sector these days is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's a forefront of the priority list for the Water Environment Federation and for a lot of utilities and organizations out there. So we're going to talk about that with Kirsten here. Kirsten Williams, you are the Chief Communications and Stakeholder Engagement Officer at DC Water. And as a communications person myself, I'm very curious about this title and this role.
No, it is such an opportunity for the water utility industry to think about having a C-suite role as a communications leader as you're thinking about your senior executives. I have to give a little shout out to David Gaddis, who's our Chief Executive Officer and General Manager. I'm relatively new, so I'm a newbie to our C-suite. Just the role was created about a year and a half ago, and he really, as we're in this discussion about DEI, it's certainly a good nod to him as we're talking about the importance of engagement with your customers, your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders. He certainly saw the value of having your communicator at the table. So as you're talking about your major initiatives or the risk, branding, all of those things, it's so important to have that voice at the table. And I think that's a good thread for DEI as we're discussing it in the industry today.
Really focus on those relationships and connections with people in the community, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the chief communications piece is one part, right? People think of it as your marketing, your bill inserts, just your website, but the stakeholder engagement piece is really what's pivotal and key for me. We do have to think about engagement outside of just your traditional customer who's paying a bill, right? We have our business community that's a stakeholder. We have our nonprofit community who's a stakeholder. All of what you think about we're faced as with the industry, climate change, et cetera, it's important that we have those partnerships and relationships. So it's not just looking at it in a narrowly focused to just your individual customer, but really thinking about how engagement helps you push forward what you're trying to achieve for your communities.
And on the DE&I front, this is something you're focused on too. I'd like to try to start those conversations with a little bit of table setting and definition here, right? Like we use these words a lot, but what do they mean? So what does the word diversity mean to you?
You know, that I appreciate that you are breaking those three words down. It is not often that we look at them we've grouped them together, and I think for a long time everybody was checking off the proverbial diversity box and thinking, okay, well I have, women in my workforce, I have people of color in my workforce, but it's really more than that, especially for me. I am a fourth generation utility employee. So while my family's background has been in the energy sector, it's so many similarities. Certainly we see the nexus to water and energy with climate change and that part, but that legacy that my family gave me that opportunity to continue to pass that torch is important, especially as an African American and especially as a woman in a utility industry. So that's really what, the diversity lens has done for me as African Americans who started in the industry in the early 1900s. It really put my family on a different path forward. So it's important for me today to continue to do these discussions to expose people like me who look like me to the industry, and that all of the opportunities are vast, right? You don't have to be working as a water operator, but you can be a communications personnel, or representative in that
so many
industry.
different types of jobs,
Exactly.
And it seems like more types of jobs all the time as the water sector kind of grows its role in our communities. The equity word, what does that mean for you?
It's leveling the playing field. And a lot of times it's somewhat uncomfortable sometimes to have these DEI conversations because you do have to face the fact that there are underserved communities, there are injustices that have happened in our communities. But I think we have to, Mahatma Gandhi said, be that change. So you have to face forward the fact that equity isn't a bad thing. Giving someone an opportunity that wasn't there for them, maybe previously, but it does help to really carry forward what our mission is, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and then that last letter, inclusion.
So everyone says, show up as your authentic self. Some days, that's me, no makeup, with my camera turned off, right? But in all sincerity, I think the inclusion part is important as we think about what our society is today. We have so many variations of who our employees are, who our communities that we serve are, and we do want them to be okay telling us what they need. So inclusion is listening. I think oftentimes in this space we want to tell our stakeholders or our customers, our employees what's best for them. But I think the inclusion part is truly listening to what they need and how you can best serve.
Yeah, and I've heard people say it's great to build a more diverse workforce, but you need to make sure then that people, when they come in, are getting the opportunities internally, and that they're that they're at the table and they're part of everything that's happening. Right. A little bit more, just why is it important for the water utilities to have a more diverse workforce?
Well, you can think about the global pandemic, just all of the change that we've experienced, over the past 2.5 years. You've got, climate change that we're experiencing. You've got social injustices and that unrest. Gracious, now we're looking at affordability challenges that everyone is faced with, your employees and our customers. So it's important that the water industry is that leader. We really touch everything, aside from thinking about the service we provide on a day-to-day basis. You're touching schools, you're touching the economic development, the vitality of your communities. So it's important that we are reflective of that, because we want them to see the value, that we're not just looking at you as a ratepayer and looking at you as someone who is just, contributing to our bottom line, but that truly we are thinking about what's important to you and how can we help, propel our communities. We're coming in to do work, right? Be it a construction project or, thinking about a rate-making process. We want to make sure their voices are heard and that they can see themselves in what we're doing and see the value of what we're doing. I keep seeing so many of the communications individual walking around saying, what's your comm story? Yeah. And I think the comm story is a part of that DEI narrative, because we are really at a pivotal point where we have to listen to our customers and show up in a different way.
Sure. All right, let's dig into DC Water a little bit. Okay. I'll just say one of the great water utilities out there, absolutely. What kinds of things are happening at DC Water on the DE&I front? I know it's been a focus for you all, something you're really intentionally trying to make some change on.
No, I would say that our equity journey is one that is evolving. I don't want to not give a nod to our previous leadership that they were not thinking about diversity. If you look at our workforce, it really is reflective in some respects of the communities that we serve. But I think it's important to start thinking about how we've changed. The pendulum has swung a little bit, and we've certainly moved to it. And I have to give kudos to our leadership team and our employees that they are really out pushing forward those initiatives, from everything to our construction programs, our lead-free DC initiative. We announced it in 2018 as a part of Mr. Gaddis's really leadership strategy on what he wanted to do that was the right thing to do. But under the leadership of Keisha Powell, we took a step back and really looked at how we could implement that program through an equitable lens. So we were kind of changing how the methodology, and that was important. We also started our strategic plan. We have a new one, Blueprint 2.0, and equitable imperative is one of our 5 imperatives. So healthy, safe, and well, resilience, reliability, all of the kind of core values of the industry. But I am leading the equitable initiative, and it's the heartbeat of our imperative. So we are really starting to get our employees to think about equity, and not just from the vantage point of, yes, we have a diverse workforce, or yes, our leadership team looks like the community we serve. Yeah. But how can we think about from an operations perspective? Like, how are we approaching our CIP program? How are we approaching our rate making to look about affordability and make sure we are doing the things that our community needs? So I'm proud of especially of our lead-free DC initiative, that it is indicative of the EJ40 movement on the federal government and what they're doing. So that's just, one thing that we're doing externally. Internally, we have a host of programs for our employees. We have a One Water Council where each division and cluster is sitting down and having those hard conversations. Like, are we, not just, as we say, checking off the box, right? You don't want to be that person to just walk the walk, but you've got to talk the talk. And so those are some things we're doing internally as well.
I love that you pointed out there's internal DE&I stuff to do, and there's external stuff to do, especially around water equity and affordability and environmental justice. And what's the reaction to the from the workforce to this approach, both internal and external? How do people feel, your employees feel about this being a priority?
There were several leaders that were the face of our equity movement. And it was great. We were one of the early supporters of the U.S. Water Council's initiative or the U.S. Water Alliance's initiatives. And so when we started talking about equity, we were ready to go out into the community and tell our equity story. And we had to take a step back to say, wait, do our employees really know what equity is? So that was what we did. We went on an internal equity journey of listening to them, of trying to understand what equity means to them. So as we have a definition, it's one that we're not just talking it, but they can internalize it and understand what it means and how it really does go across the authority enterprise-wise. And so that's been a journey, right? I don't want to suggest that it's something that's been this, quick sea change adoption. No, there's certainly pieces and complexities and the realization too that sometimes that equity journey is expensive, that we may have to offer different programs or how we look at what we're doing into that community benefit in one community in the District of Columbia different than what we will do in another. And so that doesn't mean that it's unfair, but it just means that we're really looking at those underserved populations and really trying to make sure, as we are being that leader we want to be, that we're doing it the right way. So you can see employees getting behind it. We had Benny Starr who came, who was the artist in resident. And, you think about equity as just one thing, but really just trying to break it down and make it normal. It's just not a nomenclature that's just a word, but how can you really adopt it and internalize it?
Yeah, that's, you have, utilities are so busy. You have so much work to do just on a daily basis to clean that water, to deliver that water, all that, right? Meet the regulations. And so sometimes it can be like, oh wow, we gotta figure out how to carve out time and resources and energy to do this other stuff. But then I guess the idea is that after you go through that process, then it's just part of regular business. Is that, you guys are you there yet, or you're getting there, or that's also,
No, I would give a, step back moment to say, I think we are there.
Okay.
Even from our supplier diversity, that's something where in a lot of instances we've had our vendors or contractors that we've just done business with year over year. But if we really want to help those entities who have not had a level playing field, then we have to stop and take a sit back and say, who are the women-owned businesses? Who are those small minority-owned firms that can compete? They just need one chance, right? All of these entities started with one chance. Yeah. And so that's, that takes a moment because, as you know, we all have our favorites sometimes, and they know the culture and they, know what to do.
Easy just to keep rolling with.
Easy just to keep that ball rolling. But we've even, I have to give a nod to, again, our employees who have really adopted our Business Diversity Council. We have a Stakeholder Alliance that's comprised of individuals throughout the community, and they've listened so that you can, sometimes that listening is hard because, you're going to be critical of some of the things we've done in the past, or you may not know of some of the things that have been done in the past, and you have to accept it. I know from my lens as a communicator coming in, and you can see DC Water as this world-class authority, there are even things we have to do and improve upon if we truly are adopting that equitable mission and that advocacy that we want to have within this water utility industry.
Sure. Well, I would say that anytime you want to get an idea of good things to do at a water utility, look to DC Water. Look at what they're doing, communications, operations, resource recovery, whatever it might be. You guys are a leader, and this is another example on the DE&I front. Kirsten, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you for the opportunity. I certainly have to give a shout out to dcwater.com. It certainly gives a host of things. That's what these opportunities are, benchmarking best practices. We want to learn from our other, peer utilities as well. So thank you for this platform.
Absolutely. Thank you all for watching WEFTech Live. Please stay tuned for a few more interviews and booth visits and more info from WEFTech.